Whoa. Hey guys. How have you guys been? It's been a while since I last recorded a podcast, and I have some explaining to do for myself. I know. My explanation is just that moving sucks. Well, let me tell you, because you have to pack up all your belongings in a box, and then I'm sure if you've moved in your life before, you understand. Then, the movers come, they move stuff, or if you do it by yourself, you load it all in your car, then you take it to your new place, and then at that point, you're exhausted already, only to figure out that you have to then lift all those boxes, place them in the house or apartment or whatever, wherever you're moving, and then just to unpack everything. Man, it's been a process. It's been a struggle. And then finally, you get things semi set up only to find out you have no internet. We had no internet at my new place for about a week or so, and that was tough. I feel bad. Verizon got some serious money out of me because of the data charges and hotspot stuff, and just it's been a whole debacle. I waited a week and a half for internet, but we're here now, and that's all that matters. And I want to say hello, welcome. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope last week was great. I hope today's going great for you, or tonight, whenever you're listening to this. And welcome to The Vert. This is my podcast hosted on theverticaljump.org, where I can give it to you guys straight, share some of my opinions, and just sit back, chill, and talk to y'all. It's the doldrums of summer, and truly now you can say that not much is going on in the realm of sports or really anything. People are just kind of living life and enjoying summer, and though that's a good time, it makes hosting a podcast kind of hard. You're looking for stuff that you can have an opinion on and stuff that you can talk about. You have to do some serious digging. And so, I did some digging, and I've been really into international basketball lately, mainly because it's basketball and I'll watch anything that's putting that orange ball through that orange hoop. But this FIBA World Cup is coming up late August and early September. And it seems that every all-star on Team USA has opted out. The dropouts for the Team USA Select Camp that's going to then dwindle down to the team that they sent to China is James Harden, Anthony Davis, Damian Lillard, Tobias Harris, Bradley Beal, CJ McCollum, DeMar DeRozan, Eric Gordon, Kevin Love, Zion. These guys all just said, I don't feel like playing international basketball. And I think this is kind of problematic. Now, hear me out. A lot of USA fans are saying, well, we're going to win anyway. We can send a D team out and still beat the majority of the world. But it's not putting a good representation of the United States national team to the world out there. What this is saying is that international basketball is so non-competitive for these all-stars and superstars in the NBA, it's not worth playing. And what they're going to do is they're going to skip out on this FIBA World Cup tournament and then want to hop into next year's Olympics. And, that's when you're going to see all the stars saying, oh, well, it's the Olympics. I'll play now. Roger Sherman at The Ringer had a really good article on this. I was reading up trying to figure out more of why stars aren't joining in on Team USA. And he talked about in this article that it really goes in cycles. This isn't the first time that we've seen a plethora of superstars and all-stars drop out of Team USA. It happened in 2002 at the World Championships. That team was headlined by Reggie Miller at 37 years old. And so then it happened in 2004 with a team that was led by Marbury. And so he talks about in this article how USA basketball goes in cycles. And so far it's been 16-year cycles where they go 16 years, they have a debacle, and on the last end of those 16 years are kind of declining. And then they face a devastating and embarrassing loss for the USA. Then all of a sudden, star interest in competing for your national team is brought back up and you see superstars wanting to play. But that's kind of where the article left off. He just talked about the whole process of these 16-year cycles where superstars get disengaged near the end of that 16-year cycle. They face a devastating loss, and then everybody wants to play again. But I'm here to say, how do we break that cycle? How do we keep star players engaged and wanting to play for Team USA? Because the United States is the only national team where its superstars from there don't feel the urgency and pride to represent their country. And it's partly led by the arrogance that follows Americans. And I guess I kind of have a right to say that because I'm not necessarily born here, but there's a certain pride and arrogance that follows Americans in terms of sports. They believe that they're the best at everything and that no other team or country can compete on the same level as them aside from soccer, because in men's soccer, they've been humbled. But this arrogance that follows the Team USA team and the Team USA fans in terms of basketball is dangerous, and it's bad for international basketball. It's pushing forward this whole idea of, man, we can send the Z team, we can send the F team, whatever. We can send our worst team and still beat every international team possible. And this idea has now perpetuated to the fans of Team USA basketball because they still believe that regardless of who we send, we should be the outright favorites. And I'm here to say that American sports are fascinated with themselves. You know, America's the only country in the world where their domestic leagues don't compete on an international stage in terms of their sports. You don't see a lot of these NBA teams competing against foreign teams unless it's just an exhibition. And even that only happens a few times a year, maybe once or twice when a team goes on tour in China. American sports are fascinated with themselves. They like to keep themselves locked into what their borders are, into who they are. And in doing so, they kind of eliminate and exercise the rest of the world. They kick everybody out. And so then American fans get in this whole mode of, well, we're already the best league in the world. And you have to say, how can you know that when you don't compete against other leagues? You don't compete against the English Basketball League. You don't compete against the Euro League in basketball. You don't compete against those guys. So the NBA, in terms of talent level, may be the best league in the world, but they also don't compete against other top leagues in the world. We don't know how good an NBA team could compete against a Euro League team because they've never played each other in a meaningful game. So yeah, maybe Team USA sends the F team and dominates. I'd hate to see that for international basketball. For USA fans, yes, great, we won another World Cup without trying. But then it drives home this idea that we're Americans. We don't have to try in these international competitions. We can just hop in and whoop y'all and hop out, and it's the same story over and over again. And I'm saying that if we don't change that understanding in Team USA basketball, we're heading for another case where America's going to get sixth place in the Olympics. It's happened before. We're headed for another place where America's going to get bronze in the World Cup. It's happened before. And the fans are just now so accustomed to seeing great players play on an international stage that they believe that they can send anybody from America and beat some of these professional basketball players that play overseas. With that being said, I want to kind of educate you guys on some teams that could pose a threat to Team USA. The first of these, in my opinion, is Serbia. Serbia have Nikola Jokic. You know, that guy up in Denver that led the Denver Nuggets to a surprise 2 seed, then almost a Western Conference Finals berth, finished third in MVP voting. Yeah, he plays for Serbia, and he's most likely going to play in this tournament. And so if America sends PJ Tucker, Jason Tatum, and guys like that, Donovan Mitchell, you're playing a Serbian team that's played together for years, and chemistry plays a factor in these tournaments. And they surround the Joker with former NBA players, Mizo Teletovic, and they have current NBA player Boban, you know, one of the heaviest guys in the NBA. So that Serbian team's fun to watch, and they're going to be a tough out if they end up playing the United States outside of group play. Because with the way that these tournaments are set up, it's not about who has the most talent at the end of the day. A lot of these teams, you know, in comparison, aren't always going to stack up on paper. But these international teams play together a lot. The USA doesn't. These international teams, they have to play in qualifying together. They travel together. And there's something unique about going through shared experiences that brings teammates, family, whoever it is, closer together. And these international teams have that while the United States doesn't, because The United States national team is a bunch of star players that are just thrown together. They spend 2 weeks in camp. They tour the United States and head out for this tournament. The next team that I think could pose a threat to the United States is Spain. They're a really veteran team with guys like Ricky Rubio, Juan and Willie Hernan Gomez, and Marc Gasol. This is the type of team that I can definitely see this Team USA team losing to. These guys have been playing together for a while. The average age on that team is like 25, and they've been in these competitions. They've been in these big international games before, so they know how to conduct themselves. And if we're trotting out a Z team for Team USA that hasn't played together before, it's going to be a tall proposition to ask them to take down a team that is bonded over shared experiences, shared failures, and shared successes. This USA team, if they end up playing Spain, could lose. The next of these teams that pose a serious threat to Team USA is Greece. Now, Greece, in terms of overall talent, is lacking, but they have a few really good players in the Antetokounmpo brothers, all three of which have had stints in the NBA, and most famously Giannis, who took home MVP last season. Giannis is the type of player that can dominate an international tournament single-handedly. Kind of what Kyrie did 5 years ago in the last FIBA Basketball World Cup. They're a tough out just because of the talent of one player alone, who is arguably the best player in the NBA. A team that has the best player in the NBA, arguably one of the best players in the world, to go up against a team with no chemistry in Team USA, that's a problem. And the last team that could pose a serious threat to Team USA is France. They have Nicolas Batum, plays for the Charlotte Hornets. Evan Fournier plays for the Orlando Magic. Rudy Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year, plays for the Utah Jazz. And Frank Ntilikina, backup point guard for the Knicks. That's serious NBA talent right there. And for France to end up playing Team USA, I think that'd be a favorable matchup for France in this case. Because Rudy Gobert is a staunch defender in the middle. He's going to clog the lane. Nicolas Batum, though he's had a couple down years in Charlotte, international play is a lot different than NBA. Evan Fournier is a reliable shooter. And Frank Ntilikina, in international play, is an athletic guard that can get downhill and create for others. He's a stout defender as well for his position. This France defense is deadly, and a Team USA team with no stars could struggle to score against them. So those are my 5 teams that I believe pose a serious threat to Team USA. And America is still favored headed into the tournament, but a team with no stars that has no chemistry, I just don't want Team USA and American fans to be surprised if their team doesn't take home the gold medal in this World Cup. So keep that in mind as you watch this tournament or get ready to watch this tournament later in August and early September. It's showing all the signs of former Team USA teams that couldn't win it all. And yet, American fans are still carrying this arrogance about, we can send anybody and still win. Basketball is getting better around the world, and America has to do their part to keep up. And hopefully a loss will then incite these star players to want to play for their country and show some national pride. Because basketball is the only sport where you see these superstars choose not to play for their country. Think about how crazy it would look if Ronaldo didn't play for Portugal in a World Cup. Think about how crazy it'd look if Messi said, Argentina, I'm not going to play. Now, Messi has quit international play before, but he's come back because it's that pride of supporting your country. It's that pride of putting on your country's colors and saying, this sport is so much bigger than just my paycheck. Basketball has become too transactional in that sense for me. These players are saying load management because they want to save their bodies to get their next contract. And we need to get back to the point where these stars are playing just because they love the game and they want to have some pride in their country. It's just an idea. It's just a thought. It's just my opinion. And we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. And we're going to be talking some football for the first time on this podcast. Stay tuned to The Vert. Welcome back to The Vert here on theverticaljump.org, or if you're listening on Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts from, we're everywhere. I hope you are having a good day. And man, I'm excited for this next segment. We're talking football and specifically the Carolina Panthers. Now, if you guys don't know, I am a Panthers fan. And so I've kind of dealt with some heartache. You know, I've had my highs and I've had my lows. But this is the first year I've had since our Super Bowl season where I'm kind of excited about what this year holds. Our key additions of the offseason were Gerald McCoy, Matt Paradis, Bruce Irving, Chris Hogan. And then we have some key rookies in Brian Burns and Greg Little, who's going to get the start. And I kind of just want to talk about the Panthers and their offseason and why I'm excited for what's to come. And that's because this offseason, the Panthers finally prided themselves in patching up the holes in the team that they've gone so long ignoring. You know, they believe that they can rely solely on the talent of Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey, and then on the defensive end of Luke Kuechly and former Thomas Davis, who is now off the team. We had a retirement home for a defense. Our defense was old. It was slow. And though our front seven were great, the DBs in the secondary was suspect at best. And finally, we're taking steps in the right direction to improve both sides of the ball. Greg Little assures our O-line, and finally Cam Newton has some pass protection. So maybe Cam Newton by, week 8 won't be reeling in pain every single day. And that's finally something nice to see. And this year is all dependent upon, one, the health of that O-line. Can our investments stay healthy? And two, how Cam Newton goes. This team goes as Cam Newton goes. And when he's playing with swag and he's playing the game and enjoying it, this Panthers team is a tough out. And then when Cam Newton gets in one of those spirals where things aren't going his way, you see him more sulking on the sidelines, not really into the game, more engaged, the team struggles as well. This team goes as Cam Newton goes. And I expect Cam Newton to take a big leap in terms of his leadership abilities this season. And that if he's healthy coming into the year, which, he's about to head to training camp, then this team has real potential to finally make the playoffs, and not only make the playoffs, make some serious noise in the playoffs. But if Cam Newton reverts to old habits, goes back to his old throwing motion that left his shoulders susceptible to injury, starts taking hits again, the O-line can't protect him, it's going to be a trademark Carolina Panthers season where you finish 7-9. This Panthers team is known for these hot starts over the year. You jump out to a 4-0, 5-1 record, and then halfway through the year, things kind of tailor off because that's what happens with Cam Newton. Halfway through the year, things tailor off. And I'm hoping that Cam Newton can make that leap that he did in his MVP season where he's great for 16 weeks out of the season. Because if he's great for 16 weeks out of the season, this Panthers team has a real shot to go 12-4. And, Tampa Bay, they got a little bit worse with the moves they made this offseason. I think the Saints missed their window. The Falcons are the Falcons. So really, this is a Panthers division to win. And for the first time in a really long while, I'm excited to watch them play on Sunday. I'm excited to see how the season goes, and I'm excited to see the steps that Cam Newton takes into stepping from just being a good quarterback to an elite quarterback. And the time's ticking on Cam. He's not young anymore. He can't keep taking hits like this, and he doesn't necessarily have more years at the end of his career than he does now. And so can he take this leap? Because if it doesn't happen this year, I'm scared that it won't happen in his career trajectory. And I want Cam to prove the Colin Cowherds of the world and the doubters of the world, the guys that came up with the slogan Scam Newton, wrong. I want him to redeem the year that he had last year where, he suffered that injury. And so the Panthers, my prediction for my favorite team in the NFL this season is 12-4, but maybe that's me being slightly biased. Who cares? We're all in, keep pounding. Keeping on this football side of things, I want to talk about the TV show Last Chance U I don't know if you've heard of it. You probably have if you're listening to this podcast. It's one of my favorite shows on Netflix. The reason is because it deals directly with people, not just the sport. So let me tell it to you like this. We view sports as, this overarching umbrella, and everything under that fits under that umbrella. But Last Chance U kind of reverts that model. So it has sports, but then it says, let's glorify the people more than just the sport. Let's look at this person's life more than just football and what led them to where they're at now. So the whole premise of Last Chance U is, if you guys aren't familiar with the show, it's these guys that are, former top recruits, former Division I football players that find themselves at a JUCO school, and it's their last chance to ever make it Division I or even make it to the NFL someday. They're on their last chance, hence it's Last Chance U. Now, with characters like this and guys like this that are on their last chance, you get a lot of these guys that have emotional baggage, and they have a lot of heavy stuff that they're carrying. And when you have a lot of heavy stuff and emotional baggage, often that's because the environment that they grew up in was not the best for them. It didn't specifically cultivate their skills off the field. Football has always been that safe haven. And Last Chance U basically said, let's get in there with football, but learn about the person. So that's why I love Last Chance U. So now that you kind of have an understanding of the show and all that and why I love it, I wanted to talk specifically about this year's team rather than the whole premise of the show. This year's Last Chance U team has one of the best recruiting classes in JUCO football. They have top D lineman prospect Jermaine Johnson. They have guys like Marquise King and Kaleon Davis, quarterback from Georgia Tech, Jay Jones. Guys like this where they come into the season believing we're going to win the Natty. You look around, you see all these guys, you know their names, you see how they play. They play with that intensity. They had this understanding that, hey, we're going to win the Natty. Now, spoiler alert, they didn't win the Natty. They only won 2 games. And then at the end of the season, head coach Jason Brown was fired. Now, I want to talk about how can you have so much talent and only win 2 games, especially at the JUCO level where some teams aren't as funded. Some teams just don't have as much talent because they don't have the resources to recruit the way you do. And that solely falls on the head coach, Jason Brown. Now, Jason Brown, maybe he's good with the X and O's in terms of football and offensive play calling. But to me, he's still a horrible football coach because he's a bad leader of men. He makes decisions solely based on emotion rather than taking time to assess a true situation. And that's why so many times in season 4 of Last Chance U, you saw the Pirates with a 21-0 lead and then somehow it craters and they lose the game. You saw them come back from a 21-0 deficit and still lose the game. Because the team goes as that leader goes, right? We talked about this a bit earlier in the podcast, but teams go as their leader goes. And when this stuff happens where you have these emotional highs and then these emotional lows, those are deep gaps. You can't go from top of the top to bottom of the bottom without the team suffering. And so when the team's winning, head coach Brown is there on the sidelines, he's ecstatic. And then when the team starts losing, he loses everything. He wants to fight the opposing head coach. I specifically remember in that Garden City episode, him and the head coach at Garden City almost fought. Now your players are seeing this. The team goes as you go emotionally, and they realize that, hey, this guy doesn't have our best interest. Mind you, other head coaches on camera are talking about, after this season, I'm done because it's a toxic situation. Your job is never safe with Brown because you have one bad game and he'll fire you versus looking at your track record. He did that with the linebacker head coach. And so the reason in the Independence Pirates lost is because of head coach Brown. He couldn't keep his composure and he wasn't the best leader. And that's the hard part about JUCO is not just the players, but the coaches there. They're vying for that next opportunity where they can go big and they can make a name for themselves in their career. JUCO is a stepping stone for everybody. It's a swinging door. Coaching positions change. You get new players every single year. It's hard to build a program with identity. Coach Brown was trying to do that. I'm not going to take away from that. He coined the term Dream U. He built them a practice facility. He was building a culture there. But also that culture was riddled with instability as well as emotional turmoil. The guy couldn't keep his cool, and that's because he's just a guy that isn't naturally a great leader. He doesn't understand that leaders have to know when and where to push and pull. You can't berate around the locker room cussing out every single player every single time. And that's the reason why at the end of the season, players weren't buying in. Nothing's ever good enough for them, or you're the best player in the world. There's never that, yeah, you're a good football player. You made some mistakes here, but we can work on that and get better next week. You never heard those words out of Brown. It was always, we're going to kill them, and then when they lost, y'all suck. So for Coach Brown, maybe going forward, I hope he gets another coaching gig where he can prove the world wrong, because if cameras were following all of us around 24 hours a day, they're bound to find something wrong with our character. None of us are perfect. But for Coach Brown's football and coaching career, he has to work on being a better leader. He has a book out called Hate Me Now, Love Me Later, and I have not yet got my hands on it. But if it's what it says it is, that he's going to be, this hard ass on you, he's going to be pushing you all the time. Well, yeah, that's partly true, but also in leading, you have to know when you can't push too much. You have to know when you have to let up a little bit. You have to know how to talk to guys. And Bobby Bruce, one of my favorite characters in Last Chance U history, got caught up stealing because he wanted to go home. He had a child on the way and had a bill to be paid. But he couldn't talk to his coaches about that. He couldn't talk to anybody about that. And in result, he made the wrong decision. Last Chance U is full of guys that are on their last leg trying to make the right step. But one thing can sway them off. One thing can push them in the wrong direction. And it's so hard to watch at times when it seems that these football coaches that are supposed to have their back only seemingly care about the football. In that show, the only people that care about the player's emotional life tend to be the teachers at that university. The teachers are usually an English teacher, a philosophy teacher, guys that are telling these players, hey, this football thing is great and I hope it works out for you, but you're so much more than just football. And I think that I understand you're a football coach, but they have to be able to be approachable to a degree. These coaches do. They have to recognize and be able to read their own players. And Coach Brown was just so unaware and so detached from that reality that it hurt the team's performance on the field. So they finished only up with 2 wins after having one of the best JUCO recruiting classes. It's an interesting idea, and you can see kind of where leadership takes you. Whether you have a good leaders can inspire average teams to be good teams. Or if you have a bad leader, they can take a great team and make it a horrible team. The Pirates came in ranked number 5, and they finished the year unranked. That solely is the coaching at that point. The coach is not getting these great players like Marquise King, Jermaine Johnson, Kaleon Davis bought in. Now, I get these players got offers at the end of the year, and that's what you want out of JUCO. You're trying to get film to get enough offers to go somewhere else and get out of there. But these coaches that are there, they want to win. Yes, you want to win. So how do you win? You get players to buy into your system. You get players to believe in you, believe in your play calling, believe in your understanding of the game. And you do that by building trust. How do you build trust? You listen to people more than you speak. You show them that though they're helping you out by playing for you, that they're not just a football player to you, but that they're a person. It goes back to what Last Chance U is all about. Bringing the personhood back to the athlete and realizing that a lot of us make mistakes. A lot of us find ourselves in positions that we wouldn't have been in if it wasn't for, a few wrong steps here or there. But that doesn't deny us our personhood. What we do isn't who we are. Now, let me explain that. Just because you play football or basketball, hockey, lacrosse, whatever you play, whatever sport you play, that does not mean that that is all you are at the end of the day. And Last Chance U is tapping into that. They're saying these guys, though they've made mistakes, though they are great football players, and though they've been through a lot, that doesn't mean that's all they are. Because at the end of the day, these guys are also scholars. They're guys that are going on to college, 4-year universities that are going to make a name for themselves, not just on the football field. That's what we have to tap into. And that's why Last Chance U is such a good show, and why I also think that Coach Brown just didn't get it. Guys are more than football players, and he struggled to see that. Another telling thing is that Coach Brown got fired at the end of the year, and it wasn't for the fact that the team won 2 games, but it was more so for the fact that he called a German student his new Hitler. And that whole debacle kind of really showed Coach Brown's character, that you can text a kid that's a red shirt on your team that's German that you, the coach, are his new Hitler. And then he acted shocked when the kid took the complaint to the school board. You just got to be smarter. And, you know, if Coach Brown was a bit smarter, he'd still have his job and he would have still had a winning season if he had more emotional intelligence. And, you know, going forward, I wonder what team they're going to pick for season 5 of Last Chance U, if they're going to stay in Independence, Kansas. I'd like to see what that team does this year with the former assistant coach now becoming head coach. But Coach Brown, he suffered from a low emotional intelligence. And in doing so, he wasn't able to read people, and he wasn't able to see people for more than just what they do. Don't be that person. If you've made it to this point in the podcast, that means you've made it to the end. If you found anything I said here entertaining, fascinating, interesting, subscribe to our podcast. We can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts from. Make sure to follow me on social media. My Instagram is at Ian_KAYJAY, and my Twitter is at IANKAY. Make sure to stay tuned to next week's edition of the Vertical Jump podcast here on theverticaljump.org. As always, may the rest of your day be the best of your day. Thanks for listening.